Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm, exploring language, looking for axiomization of sensorality. So, what do we have? What is the basis of entropy? All right, entropy, entropic, and tropicality. Tropicality, what is tropic, is the base of entropy. Why is that? Not the right question to ask. Is it? Yes. So again, there's not right or wrong to language, there just is. And so tropicality is the base of entropy. But why would that be? Again, that's not the right question, but what is tropical, right? If you think tropical, I guarantee the word in your brain is humidity. That's what you thought of? Absolutely. Ha ha ha. I can predict your words. No, I can't. They're just related. When I say one, another one pops up. And I know a lot of words. But how does humidity relate to entropy? If there's more moisture in the air, does that inherently make it more disorderly? My natural inclination is to say more humidity, more entropy, they're proportional. More energy you can't use if there's more moisture. But then I take a step back and say, why? Like, why would that be? If there's more moisture in there, there's more water molecules, there's more of a given element. Why is that? Why would that be more necessarily disorderly? Why would there be less energy available to do work? So, how does humidity relate to entropy? Rising, soarising. Right, so we talked about how we've shown how we have some sort of bounding to the beginning and end of a word. We're trying to figure out exactly what that functionality is, but it's clearly evident. And then we insert words, we insert different syllables, and we expand and contract our language. And so we're looking for, again, we had demeaning is mean, mean is demeaning, soarality is sizing, right? Sensorality, soarising, sizing. So if you just literally remove or from soarising, you get sizing. So we have a natural definition there. We'll get to another one here in a second. But soarality sizes, and that is a natural definition. And it's a natural, right, a size, right? We did maximum, medium, minimum, or, small, medium, large. But that is, a connection to a fundamental idea that everybody knows. And it's a form of the word soarality, clearly. Soarize, size. How does dichotomy relate to reciprocity? Right? What is dichotomy? Dichotomy is, again, we have this emergence, or the proven fundamental stability of two. It emerges in a lot of different, it manifests in a lot of different ways. What is dichotomy? Just, again, comparing and contrasting. I would say it's comparison in general. We talk about how comparison doesn't necessarily mean the same or different, it just means comparison. But I just wanted to get another question to pose, see if we can generate any good logic. What is reciprocity? Right? Reciprocity is equality. What you do to me, I will do to you. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I don't give a fuck. I give that equality. Equality is just, right? If you want justice, if you want equality, what is done to me is done to you. And historically, that is how it evolved, is, the fear of God, so to speak, and then an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind as an extension of that logic. Somebody says an eye for an eye in the rank of a judge, and then somebody else comes along and says, well, that's not right, makes the whole world blind. And it's really, again, equality is the overarching theorem, principle of all existence. What is done to somebody, if you, again, right or wrong, good or bad, equal is one for one. But what is reciprocity? What is prosody? And so what I was thinking here was, all right, reciprocity, reciprocal, clearly, well defined in mathematics. But when I was talking about range extending vowels and letters, going past the fifth element, analyzing our alphabet as what words, is the whole alphabet the base? Or is there a certain amount of those sounds of an alphabet the base? Is the base the range? What is exactly an alphabet? And what is an alphabet, minimizing or consolidating? My point being is reciprocity or condensation, what exactly, if we go from range degenerating into base, how does that work linguistically? With consideration to the shape of the letters, all these different aspects we've identified. But reciprocity, again, that one way you build, it's unique. Asymmetry, there's no symmetry. So reciprocity completely doesn't exist, or an incompleteness does not exist. But there's some sort of intuition I have of reciprocity where, again, you're expanding, you're condensing. So if you reciprocate, but again, you can't, right? You can't move more than the potential energy you have. Again, going back to Newtonian language, and so like reciprocity, or you can't. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but when you condense a word, clearly there's words that have bases. So we're looking at the emergent, the range, and we're deriving it to the base. And so how does reciprocity play into that process? But reciprocity, recipe, an algorithm is a recipe. And so now we have extended, right, from rhythm, rhythms are base, to algorithm, algorithms are range. Remember, the title of this lecture series I made on purpose 5 years ago or whatever, because it's a form of a solution, just in a very not even in a very general sense, because this is how much language goes into deriving one letter, one word, blah, blah, blah. And so a rhythm is a recipe, where we've mapped that logic into something we clearly know, and it ends in E, keeping it open. And so again, we've built up our logic to the base and defined that we're in 3 dimensions. That's where all of our measurements are. We're doing it based off, literally proof based off of existence. We've generated and proven enough logic to do so. And now we've mapped our range and our base to words that we know. Jumped ahead. Sensorality clicks. Okay, so if I take my pen and I do this, what is that? What is that sound? If I take my thumb and my finger and go like this, what is that sound? Now, science club that I haven't talked to in 8 years, remember snap your fingers? I told you we were going to get back to that, and now we're back to that. But your click, right? A click is different than a snap, right? You definitely said that was a snap, and when I did this with my pen, you were probably like, huh, I don't know what that was, but is this a click or a snap? Sensorality with a C, clicks. Sensorality with an S, snaps. And so, but the point being is we have motion that produces distinct sound. Proof. And so what happens is, but when you say, I get something, the light bulb moment, it clicks, right? So you say it clicks, right? So is this a snap or is this a click? But now the point being is we have a very, very clear fundamental differentiation of sensorality with a C and sensorality with an S. Snapping versus clicking. So I don't even think about sensorality anymore. We're normalizing, we're starting over. Here's our base evidence. I haven't said one word in this entire lecture series. What is the difference between snapping and clicking? And so, again, because very clearly, right, that's why ASMR, auto, right, sensorial, right, there's sensorality right there in an acronym. But ASMR is popular because of order, because of rhythm. And so that is why you have oddly satisfying ASMR on Reddit. But click, slick, sensorality, slicks. That's with an S, again, keeping the consistency of S with S, C with C. The slack is the opposite of tension, right? If you have something that's taut, then you have something that doesn't have slack. If you have something that's slack, it is not tense. So that is the natural opposition. But a click is not a snap. And that's we've just started over. We're base physics. I'm a little baby. That is clearly a different sound, and we've clearly identified a difference extremely fundamentally. And now we've built enough logic to trivially solve an axiom. Just plug in our word and say, this process is that word. And here is why you cannot deny it. Sorality, from sensuality to sensorality. Again, sensuality is a form of sorality or sensorality that people already use, which I'm sure you've made that connection a long time ago when I started saying sensorality, sensual. But we had to build up to, again, that big valley, point A, point B, huge valley of logic to go what seems to be a very small jump. But again, this is all proof from first principle. And so that's why there's no citations. It's just really from personal, evident, visceral experience to definitive logical proof. And then we reduce the linguistics to there's nothing to debate. But those are connecting two bases with four, again, syllability of four, and those those fours reduce, but just connecting sensuality to sensorality officially. But I'm sure you've made that connection. Memory is sensory. I probably already said that. Because remember, this whole proof is in the context of sensorality. This is how all of these words that I've used in the entirety of the past since I introduced the word 6-7-ish years ago, or constructed the word. I didn't introduce it. I don't pick the solutions. They're just there. But memory is sensory, sensory, censored, and we have censored, censored, the S and the C. Again, just purely differentiating the linguistics now. What is censored with a C? Because remember, that is the direct form of the solution that we are solving, and then that will give us expand into our definitions of our open definition of sensorality with an S that is malleable and is completely generally relative to other words. Censoring corners, right? Keeping that C with a C. Soaring corners, right? Just chop off that CEN prefix now. So now then we have an S and a C. What is cornering? Right? If I put somebody into a corner, you're like making it so they have no way out. You're giving them no choice. Corner, honor, sensorality, honors, right? My table is not going to do something honorable. It's going to exist, but it's not going to go do something. Honorality, sorality. Failure does not work. And if I just say like failure does not work, that's just a theorem. Like that's a theorem like any other theorem. I've just built the logic to simply state theorems. And they're proven fundamentally. Where everybody speaks in theorems at different levels of specificity all of the time, you don't have the backing to say that I proved it is what it is the form of all solutions. I do. But it doesn't mean it's any less work. It's actually profoundly more work. Evidently. Rhythming is smoothing. Right? If something is in rhythmic motion, if something has a regular frequency, then it smooths. And so smoothing, right, thing is the base of smoothing. So now we've connected sensorality is a thing, sensorality smooths. But we can now solve Navier-Stokes trivially by completely defining smoothness. Does the Navier-Stokes equation exist? Well, of course, some dude named Navier and Stokes wrote down an equation. Does a solution to the equation exist? We'll break down the logic in an upcoming video. Like and subscribe. I've already solved all these stupid problems like 100 times. Here's just a brief chunk of derivation. Anything relevant will be typed out on the screen. Sensorality is a thing. Sorality is a thing. Soaring is a thing. Soaring is a thing. Flying is soaring. Momentum soars. Sensorality soars. Sorality soars. And so just working through, there's some in there with a C, some in there with an S. I might type them out, but the thing, it was a meaningful chunk of derivation, and you can see it in my derivation book if you ever go to my museum. I don't fucking know. But that's another natural definition. So we have sorality sizes and sorality soars as two natural definitions. So soaring, S-O-A-R-I-N-G, has to relate to sizing, S-I-Z-I-N-G. And so now what we're doing is, again, we're showing two different basic forms of these words in their natural definitions, relating those natural definitions, and then, again, just sealing that proof up with physical, empirical evidence. Cadence is decadent. Cycle, cyclicity. Right, so I wanted to, those two dichotomistic pairs, cadence, decadent, cycle, cyclicity, don't you hear that pronunciation difference thing going on? Like one, like contestality, that hard T, C and S kind of, sometimes they're soft, sometimes they're hard, sometimes you have a little say deal in French, sometimes you have I forget the accent mark, what it's called, Durshak or Durishk, or the little circumflex above a vowel in Slavic languages, like softens them. So cadence, decadent. Now cadence, what does that mean physically? Is like the flow, the progression through words, or progression through a sequence. But why is there some sort of aspect of syllability, right? Clearly decadent is built on cadence, but like, can we have some sort of a hard sound, mjortijnak to vjortijnak? If you don't know what those are, they're like literally accent letters in Cyrillic alphabet that indicates hard or soft sounds. That's literally what they are. You don't ever pronounce any of them, but it indicates how you pronounce letters previous or after them. And so there's very clearly, linguistical elements to differentiate hard or soft. And so how do we generalize that into syllability where it's very clear? Cadent, cyclicity, clis. It's a lot softer, it's slick, it's smooth, it's sly, it's the letter C in Polish. but it's true. And so that I've been working on that sound literally demonstrably since, remember my neighbor Adam? Dude, why are you still doing science? Still haven't figured out what say is in Polish, or it's say, the thing in Cyrillic, or why that's relevant to this proof, but it is, and we're still working on it. Think about that, my old neighbor Adam. Your sons have grown up to adulthood, and I'm still at my parents' house deriving science with no paychecks. I still want my fucking money, you dick. Permeate, propagate. What's the difference? If you permeate, you're going through a medium. If you propagate, you're also going through a medium. They're different words, both meaning, evolution of motion. So what is permeation? What is propagation? What's the difference? And then finally, let's close it up with, what is derivation? I say I'm deriving sensorality. And I even use the term derove in the past tense. And nobody else really says that, because nobody else has completed a proof. Right? It was like I use forms of words that nobody else has used clearly, but like derove, like I derove that, it's completely done. And so you've never experienced a complete proof where there's nothing else to do anymore. But deriving is taking from one set, again, the universe, the empirical evidence I have available to me in my environment. I take that, my input set, the amount of information I process is smaller than the amount of information is there, and the amount of information I can prove is smaller than the amount of information I took in. So derivation is, what is that process? That is derivation, but what is it more specifically? So that is all I have for today. And again, it takes me 1 hour to derive all of these things, and you get proofs and theorems and this and that and whatever. But clearly we'll be moving on to Navier-Stokes directly here in a second. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.